How do you view your mental illness? Do you see it as a cross to bear? Do you see it as a form of suffering? Do you see it as a punishment from God or a temptation from the devil? Do you see it as a lifelong burden? Do you see it as totally unrelated to faith? How do you view your mental illness? And what are the implications of how you view it? We're going to talk about it today. I'm Laura Nicola. I'm your faithful therapist. So I had a story on my Instagram asking, for different ideas for videos, and this one came up. The question was, how do I maintain my faith during mental health struggles? Great question. My intro was, kind of purposeful in saying that I think where we need to start is how you view your mental health struggle in relation to your faith. Because if we have certain ideas of what mental illness is and how it relates to faith, it's going to impact how we cope with it, how we heal from it, if we think we can heal from it, etc. I think that, first kind of spending some time just reflecting on what you think regarding your mental health, I think that's a great place to start. Obviously, I'm biased. I'm a faith-based counselor, so talking through it in counseling, I think is very beneficial if you're willing to do that. But I think just spending the time pondering, where do I think my mental illness is coming from and what's its purpose here, I think is a great place to start. For me, I think it boils down to the fact that the psychological and the spiritual are two different components that can impact each other, but they're not directly correlated. For example, if I feel depressed, which is psychological, a mental illness, then, I may feel isolated from my community or from God. I might have symptoms of low energy or disinterest, so I might have a hard time staying awake long enough to pray, or I might not really be interested in doing what I would previously have done, which is, maybe go to the Adoration Chapel or, do an extra daily mass, something like that. Now, those are depressive symptoms that have a consequence on my spiritual life. Vice versa from that, maybe spiritually, I find myself in a state of desolation. Now, this may tempt me into more movements of the flesh, which might have a consequence of maybe lower self-confidence or lower self-esteem. So I might not like myself as much, or it could lead to a symptom of feeling guilty about it, which is a depressive consequence. Desolation might also cause a sadness or a laziness in prayer, which, could also impact my mood. So again, the faith kind of being the initiator of being in desolation, but it having a consequence and impacting my psychological health. So again, kind of knowing the underlying cause is vital. So St. Ignatius of Loyola has the 14 rules of discernment of the discernment of spirits, and spending some time with those can be really helpful. He obviously reveals what, he defines as consolation and desolation, and, how to remain in consolation and how to avoid desolation, or, helpingly, what to do if we find ourselves in desolation. But it's very clear that desolation and depression, my two examples from earlier, are not the same. Desolation needs to be resisted by our spirit and by our will, whereas depression, obviously a psychological disorder, needs to be cared for. This is really important. Desolation needs to be resisted, and depression needs to be cared for. So, when we kind of think about, depression or any, I'm using depression as the example, obviously, but, any mental health illness as, our cross to bear, we have to be careful with how we identify that, because sometimes, our cross to bear is a little misguided. I had a spiritual director tell me that one time, be careful of what you're considering your cross to bear. And I thought it was a really interesting concept. But if we think about the actual cross, right, Christ's cross, that was something that was endured and not given up. When Jesus was in the garden, he said, if, it's according to your will, Father, that you take this away from me, please do. But that wasn't the answer, so he endured it without just, oh well, I guess I'll die now, right? There was an acceptance of it and an invitation from him, from Christ, to receive God in that present moment. So we have to do the same thing with our mental illness. I don't think that it's just something that we give up on, and I don't think we're meant to do that. I don't think God is telling us to do that. I think if we truly see it as our cross to bear, we don't give up on it. We do work on healing from it. And how we do that is we invite Jesus into the trenches with us as we're fighting our mental illness. We build relationship with him as we're going through that. And we find purpose in our mental health struggles that translate more to the benefit of our soul. Because ultimately, our faith is more important to our soul than our mental health, which is kind of a harsh reality sometimes. And it kind of feels strange saying, especially since I'm a therapist, but it's true. Because, we believe in eternal life, and there will be no suffering. So we have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves spiritually in order to benefit spiritually and psychologically at the end of our life. But people can have sufferings, people can have struggles, people can deal with mental illness and still be very satisfied with their faith life. That's one of the best things, that I hear in my work is, yeah, I'm going through these things, hence seeing you in therapy, but you know what? I feel really close to Christ. He's helping me through a lot. My faith has never been so strong because I've realized I had to rely on him. Again, embracing that cross, enduring the cross, but with God as opposed to separate from him. So, ultimately, when dealing with mental health struggles, we want to be aware of the spiritual components. We want to be aware of the consequences that our mental health can potentially have on our spiritual health. But again, we don't need to see them as correlated. If I feel like I'm struggling mentally, that doesn't mean I need to struggle spiritually. Again, if I can point out the consequences that's making my spiritual health worse, then that's what I can target, and that's what I can cope with and heal with. Again, maybe in counseling. But it doesn't have to be the absence of spiritual health just because I don't have mental health. So that's kind of what I would say to, enduring, both as much spiritual and mental health as possible. Again, working on seeing them as two distinct things that have consequences to each other, but working on healing both. And arguably, like I said, maybe more the spiritual side. So let me know what you think about this. Again, the concept, that desolation needs to be resisted, depression needs to be healed. What do you think about that? Does that sound right? Does that sound hard? Does that sound impossible? I don't know. Leave me comments. Let me know kind of what traps you fall into with thinking about your mental illness. And let me know what you think about kind of the thoughts of this video. I love the comments, so please share. Please subscribe if you haven't for my weekly videos. And of course, follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. So follow me there for more tips and tricks. And as always, many blessings today.